Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Oh, dearly beloved, make it so. So welcome everyone to our Wednesday evening gathering to read and discuss Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. We are on chapter 15, his talk, The Real and the Apparent Man. We're well along in the talk. He has described the various systems of religious thought and theology in human beings, historically and in the time that he lived. He has described what happens to various people according to their natures when they leave the body and why they return to the body. And then he has said that all of this that we can experience through our 5 organs of perception, our 5 organs of action, and our minds is a mythology. Mythology is defined as a system of commonly shared beliefs. So he's saying that this exists because we believe it exists and we project its existence individually and collectively. And then he says that there is a way to transcend this mythology and become united with the one being that is the truth behind the appearance, the truth behind the apparent man, the real human, the real divine being is one and one only. And so he's come to this. When we achieve this transcendence, he says, this searching, moving, continuous struggle of forces stops forever. And that which was manifesting itself as force and matter, as struggles of nature, as nature itself, as heavens and earths, and plants and animals, and men and angels, all that becomes transfigured into one infinite, unbreakable, unchangeable existence. And the knowing man finds that he is one with that existence. Is there anything of that that you'd like to comment on from your own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that raises that you'd like to have resolved? all that becomes transfigured into one infinite, unbreakable, unchangeable existence, and the knowing human being finds that she or he is one with that existence. There's a note. Will someone read it?
I had asked which page are we on?
Can someone tell him what page we're on? Apparently not.
I'll find
I
it.
don't have the pagination in the same way that you do.
I
So
know.
no one can tell you I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Maybe 3:30.
I'm using this book and it's not the same page, so
Oh,
sorry.
no. Yeah, mine is like this. So mine is 3:30, small one.
So what is it, Triguna?
Mine is like 3:30. I'm still looking for your sentence, but I marked it from last time. It was 3:30. The
Okay,
real one is the one unit existence. That's where we stopped.
so that's the best we can do, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Maybe you'll pick it up as we go along.
Yeah.
If you
No, I think I got it. 3:30. Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good.
Oh, yeah.
So any other comment, concern, or question? All right. Triguna, your mic is still open. Okay, so the Swami quotes from one of the Upanishads, even as clouds of various colors come before the sky, remain there for a second. Someone has their mic open, so we're getting feedback. Triguna, would you turn off your mic, please?
Loxacin, levofloxacin.
Triguna,
Just a second. Just a minute.
No.
please turn off your mic.
Beg your pardon.
Turn off your mic, please. Mute yourself. There we go. Even as clouds of various colors come before the sky, remain there for a second, and then vanish away, even so, before this soul, all these various comings of earths and heavens, of the moon and the gods, of pleasures and pains, but they all pass away, leaving the one infinite blue, unchangeable sky. The sky never changes. It is the clouds that change. It is a mistake to think that the sky is changed. It is a mistake to think that we are impure, that we are limited, that we are separate. The real man is the one unit existence. The real human being is the one. By unit, he means unified. Two questions now arise. The first, is it possible to realize that? So far, it is doctrine, philosophy, but is it possible to realize it? It is. Notice the short, unqualified statement of affirmation. It is. There are men still living in this world for whom there are men still living in this world for whom delusion has vanished forever. And that includes, of course, the Swami himself, which is why he has the right to speak this way. And he could have included women as well. There are women and men still living in this world for whom delusion has vanished forever. Do they immediately die after such realization? Not so soon as we should think. Two wheels joined by one pole are turning together. If I get hold of one of the wheels and with an axe cut the pole asunder, the wheel which I have got hold of stops. But upon the other wheel is its past momentum, so it runs on for a little and then falls down. This pure and perfect being, the soul, is one wheel, and this external hallucination of body and mind, he now uses hallucination rather than mythology, and this external hallucination of body and mind is the other wheel, joined together by the pole of work or karma. So is that concept clear to everyone? That there is the soul and this mythology of organs of perception, organs of action, and mind. They're joined
Yes.
together. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, that is clear. Now, the question that Swami raised, and that's what is in my mind, that is there anybody I can meet who has this delusion vanished forever? Like, that's what he says. There are people who have this.
Somesh, do you live in Atlanta?
Yes.
When Swami Sarvadevananda is here,
Okay.
come and meet him.
When is that?
He's here from May 16th through May 19th. But the times he's available for meetings are the morning of May 17th and the afternoon of May 18th.
Okay.
So
Morning
if you
May
wish to meet with him, send me an email.
Okay.
And you can, first of all, understand that this is a very senior Swami of the Ramakrishna order.
Mhm.
The state of his realization cannot be estimated by such as I. Okay, but you can ask them this question and see what you think of his answer. And I recommend that you do, Somesh, and anyone else who has the ability to come here and meet with the Swami, I strongly recommend that you do that. He is quite a remarkable soul.
Okay.
I've
I will
known
absolutely come.
him since 1993, so I'm not speaking from casual acquaintance.
Mhm. I'll
Okay.
send you an email. I'll surely come, even if I have to take a day off. I think it's a
Okay, please
opportunity
do.
I've been waiting
Please
for.
do.
Okay, thank you.
The best time, if it's most auspicious for you, the best time would be the afternoon of the 18th.
Okay, I'll make it work.
Okay. Thank you, Somesh. Anything else that anyone would like to say or ask?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
This obliteration of this ignorance that this talks about,
Yes.
is this a thing that is a gradual process, and then all of a sudden at some point it happens and there's a complete paradigm shift for the person that it happens to? Or could it be described as something more gradual? And what do we call these people after that happens? Do we call them enlightened or jivan
Well,
mukta?
you can call them whatever you like. And here's the answer to your question. Because each of us is utterly unique, and a part of this infinite oneness, but this manifestation of us is unique. The path for each human being is somewhat different. But the answer to your question is, yes, it happens slowly and slowly. For some very few people, it happens quickly. And it does, according to Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, relate to the intensity of your effort, how fast it goes. As a matter of fact, that's exactly where we are in studying Patanjali's Yoga Sutras on Saturday. We'll talk about Yoga Sutras 21 and 22 of Chapter 1, which deal with exactly that. But here is the sequence, according to someone that at least this has recognized as an illumined soul. And that is Swami Sridharananda, who heads the work in Australia and New Zealand for the Ramakrishna Order. This is how he says it happens. We start off with the perfectly legitimate understanding and thought of ourselves, I am. Of course, how can we possibly deny it? I am. Now, we go along and something happens. And just when it happens is said to be exactly at the right time. And there is an awakening. The awakening leads us to understand that there is something behind this I amness that is that which gives rise to it. It has all these names, God, pure consciousness, all this, whatever it is that you might care to call it, formless or with form. But you have this feeling then, according to the Swami, I am and thou art. Slowly and slowly, as you gain the knowledge of that which is behind the appearance, slowly and slowly, which is a retraining of the nerves. This is what Vivekananda says. Education is nothing more than the training or retraining of the nerves. Slowly and slowly, you come to understand, thou art, and therefore I am. This ends, this period of thou art and I am, ends with what's called Savikalpa Samadhi, which is that experience that you've talked about as something that happens suddenly. You're doing whatever you do for your spiritual practices, and suddenly you understand, thou art, and I am a part of this. Somehow I am a part of it, but not separate from it in any way. Just as if you'll visualize a pie, you're looking down at the pie, and you've cut a very thin wedge from the pie, but you haven't removed it from the pie yet. There's just that tiny thin separation between the rest of the pie and the thin wedge. This is still being an experiencer who experiences, has the experience of this being a part of thou art, of the oneness, by whatever name you wish to call it or conceive of it. at some point, as you move along from there, and Patanjali says, now it's no longer a matter of self-effort. He says, up to that point, it is self-effort. The first 6 limbs of yoga, he says, are purushakara, self-effort. Then something happens to you. So the 7th and 8th limbs or steps in yoga are something that happens to you. And just how, and just when, and just in what form, you end up in this transcendental state that the Swami is talking about here. And he says there are human beings still alive at the time that he spoke this that live in this state. And I'm telling you that I personally know of at least 2. Swami Sridharananda in Australia and Swami Yogatmananda, who's the head of the Vedanta Society of Providence, Rhode Island. Sometime, probably early next year, Yogatmananda is likely to visit here. But you can go and visit him anytime you like. Does that sufficiently answer the question? I'm not hearing a response.
Yes, thank you. What was that Swami's name? You said you could go visit anytime?
In Providence, Rhode Island, his name is Swami Yogatmananda.
What's his name again, and where is he?
Yogatmananda, Y-O-G-A-T, Yogat, M-A-N-A-N-D-A, Yogatmananda.
I got it. Thank you.
He's in Providence, Rhode Island, Vedanta Society of Providence, Rhode Island. If you decide you want to go see him, you can email him or phone and be sure and tell him that the recommendation for you coming to see him came from here. All right? Your reception will be different if you tell him that this suggestion that to go see him came from here. You don't need to say
Okay,
anything more than that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, I read your email and I deeply empathize with your situation. But please don't believe there is no escape. There is. And it's a matter of self-effort in the beginning till finally we're able, as the Swami says, to cut these 2 wheels that are running together, cut them apart. And then the one stops. And the other goes on of its own momentum for some time. The Swami's going to dilate on that now. Anything else from anyone? And that was a very appropriate question. Thank you.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, I am.
in one of the talks, Swami Sarva Priyananda, I mean, it's kind of like a, a light-hearted thing that Swami Sarva Priyananda does often. I think the question was somewhat related to what happens when one becomes realized or something like that. So he was giving the example of a letter he got from a devotee. So that devotee, I forgot the name he used, but let's say Mr. Mishra or something like that. So he wrote to Swamiji saying that I am the indivisible one who is now in the form of Mr. Mishra and talking to the form of Swami, something like that. So Swamiji said, you don't have to go to all length. Just say I'm, Mishra and I need to ask this question. So of course, the way Swamiji said was very humorous. The
Yes.
other thing I wanted to say was when Swami Sarvadevananda had come here, I think before I probably got initiated, I'm not sure, or maybe soon after. And I had asked him this question: how do you recognize somebody who's a Brahmagyani? And I don't remember the entire answer, but the gist from what I recall, he said only a Brahmagyani can recognize a Brahmagyani. I don't know at that time, what. Um,
Well, I will politely disagree with the Swami, but this is the standard answer. I think that after a time in spiritual practice, you can realize, you can recognize by the way people behave, by the way they speak, and what they say. And but there has to be some purification, yes. But I'm not sure that you have to be a Brahmagyani to recognize. Maybe I'm just deluded. I don't know.
More than likely, I misunderstood the answer because
No. I'm sure he
many
said
days.
those exact words that you just said. That only a Brahmagyani can recognize a Brahmagyani. This is the Upanishadic answer.
Brother, this is Rajiv. I often felt that i- if your like body and mind is like a spoon, and why bother about the ocean if a bucket is more than enough. Like,
Yes. Well, that's exactly what Sri Ramakrishna said. You don't have to drink up all the wine in the tavern to get yourself drunk. So, yes. And this business of trying to figure things out intellectually with the left mind, Swami Prabhavananda said, gently mockingly, it's like trying to empty the ocean of consciousness with a teaspoon. The finite mind is not up to the task. The infinite being that is behind the finite mind is that itself, and so is more than up to the task.
the perspective I was trying to bring is that, let's say you meet someone who may not be Brahmagyani, or who may be, who knows, but there is a lot of transformation after you met a person. Now, it's almost like he may not be a Brahmagyani, or he or she may not be a Brahmagyani, but he or she may be a bucket and you're a spoon, and why bother?
Well, that's a very, very good point. If they are a bucket of the pure living water, why try to figure out whether that bucket is immersed in the ocean of consciousness or not? You simply take your spoonsful. Well said, Reggie.
To second Rajiv, I don't know if I'm exactly dovetailing on him, but clearly there is a feeling of calm when we see these swamis, and whether in person or even online, attending Swami Atmarupananda's classes. It just feels something different, the vibes that come out.
Yes, of course. They are different. They are not prisoners of Maya. Anything else from anyone?
You had mentioned Yogatmananda. I'm not a God realized soul, so I couldn't recognize him, but I did definitely feel a great peace in his presence and a great kindness coming from him. I did feel that. So yeah, there is something special about these guys.
Yes, there is indeed. Anything else? Thank you, Brahmadas, for that affirmation.
This is McKaylee.
Yes, Michaela.
Hi, he's on YouTube. I'm subscribed to him.
Yeah, Yogatmananda's on YouTube.
Yes.
So is Sridharananda in Australia. You can find just a ton of his stuff.
Right.
His entire Gita classes, his entire classes on some of the Upanishads and so on. You don't have to be in their physical presence. There is no such thing as time and space. Even Einstein said that's true. And I say even Einstein, what I'm talking about. Einstein said that wasn't true.
Right. It's Vedanta Society of Providence. Thank you,
Yes,
Swami.
Vedanta Society of Providence, Rhode Island, yes. And their YouTube channel, there he is. So the Swami says these two wheels are joined together by the pole of work or karma. Knowledge is the axe which will sever the bond between the two, and the wheel of the soul will stop. Stop thinking that it is coming and going, living and dying. Stop thinking that it is nature and has wants and desires, and will find that it is perfect, desireless. What an amazing state to become. I'll read that again. Knowledge is the axe which will sever the bond between the two wheels, and the wheel of the soul will stop. Stop thinking that it is coming and going, living and dying. Stop thinking that it is nature and has wants and desires, and will find that it is perfect, desireless. But upon the other wheel, that of the body and mind, will be the momentum of past acts. So it will live for some time, and that momentum or past work, until that it will live for some time, until that momentum of past work is exhausted, until that momentum is worked away, and then the body and mind fall, and the soul becomes free. This is very well explained, by the way, if you want to read it in detail. It is very well explained in the last two chapters of Adi Shankaracharya's workbook on Advaita Vedanta called Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. He talks about this, what the Swami just talks about here in detail, that the prarabdha karma, the momentum that brought the being into existence, or seems to have brought the being into existence, that will continue. So anything else to say or to ask?
So just to understand the wheels, I did find the page number. It's 331 in this book, by the way. there's two wheels that he's talking about that are joined, and one wheel is physically stopped and it's cut along the axle, correct?
Yeah, the axle, but the pole, as he calls it, the axle,
Right.
is severed. And so the momentum of the one wheel, the body-mind complex, no longer is carrying along the wheel of the Saguna Atman, the soul. So that it stops and no longer believes these things. But the wheel that was in motion because of past actions, the body-mind complex, will continue for some time, he says, even though knowledge has cut the two apart.
And that knowledge would be one of the higher samadhis.
Oh, that's one way of talking about it, yes. Actually, it doesn't have to be the highest samadhi. As Patanjali says, that's something that happens to you. You need only to achieve Savikalpa Samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
As Swami Prabhavananda would say when people wanted to talk to him about what you just referred to as the higher samadhis, he'd say, oh, first achieve Savikalpa Samadhi, then we'll talk about Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Because he would know that when they achieved Savikalpa Samadhi, they would know there was nothing whatsoever to say about Nirvikalpa Samadhi. There is nothing we can say about it. Because the experiencer disappears. There is no mind there. No one has ever been able to explain Nirvikalpa Samadhi. No one. Anyone who says they can is simply delusional or posturing, one or the other. They simply don't know what they're talking about.
And when we experience one of these samadhis, nirvikalpa or savikalpa, is our draw, our pull, our attraction to the world, does that go away?
When you experience Savikalpa Samadhi, it is transformed. It's, as the Swami says, transfigured. It no longer has the character that it did before. It no longer draws you in the way that it did before, simply because you know that what you are is far beyond that, any of that. And that is just something that is a limitation that you've allowed yourself to believe in for your own purposes. As Swami Sarvapriyananda says, we can't pretend that we're in this world by someone else's demand. He says, no, we have to admit we're here because we like it. Once Savikalpa Samadhi is achieved, and don't sell Savikalpa short, you know, this experience of oneness is, there's no way really to describe it except to say that it is totally overwhelming. It pushes everything else in your awareness to the periphery. And that's all that is in those moments. But as Sri Ramakrishna says, even the most skilled singer cannot keep her voice always on the highest note. And so you return from that awareness, that experience, to a different kind of ordinary awareness. And that's what the Swami is talking about here. Otherwise, he couldn't be talking about it as an experience.
Brother Shankar,
Yes, dear.
does one necessarily have to have like a vision of the Ishta or hear something in the state of Savikalpa Samadhi? Or it's more of
Dear
an
heart, as I said, each of us is unique. How this will come to you, that everything else but that is pushed to the periphery, is unique to you. There are similarities. There are things that can be gestured at, as the Swami is here. But there's no longer any fear of death. There's no longer the idea of going to heaven and then coming back here. Just becomes kind of laughable. Why would I want to do that? But just exactly how it will happen for you cannot be defined. And I hope that while you're here in your conversation with Swami Sarvadevananda, you'll ask him that question.
Thank you for suggesting that. I will.
Anything else from anyone? All right.
I was just I say that you that verse you read said that knowledge alone can cut the axle between the two wheels, and knowledge is what Jnana yoga is. So in theory, you should be able to use knowledge to completely cut the bonds of ignorance and have this paradigm shift. And then after that, the parabdha karma keeps the body rolling along until it dies off, you know.
Yes. But this knowledge
True.
is
I mean,
not
so samadhi doesn't have anything to do with knowledge.
well, I don't know why you say that. It is knowledge that cuts the two wheels apart. And when the two wheels are apart is when you do experience this samadhi. But the knowledge is not ordinary worldly knowledge. It's a higher form of knowledge. It's the kind of knowledge that the Swami is delivering to us in this talk. Knowledge of science, Western reductionist science, will get you only so far. But scientists say, when it comes to consciousness, we really don't know. They're just now beginning to talk about that with any seriousness in the departments of physics and other parts of academia. But it's been talked about for millennia in the mystical traditions, which is where Swami Vivekananda is coming to us. He's delivering us knowledge. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm talking about the knowledge I'm talking about is knowledge like studying the Mandukya Upanishad and starting to think very deeply about the difference between the waking state and the dreaming state and the non-dreaming state and Turiya, and making comparisons and doing, Drishka Viveka, if you really, really start to bear down on that, this is the type of knowledge that obliterates the ignorance that's keeping us bound in the illusions of samsara. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's knowledge too. It's not
Amen.
it's not sitting in meditation trying to get to some exalted level of consciousness. It's using the intellect. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yes, it's called Shravana, and then you just described Manana. And once you're convinced of the truth, truly convinced of the truth, you insist on the truth, and that is the Advaita way. But don't think it won't result in some change of paradigm, as you said. It will. As was remarked earlier, each of us will come to this in our own way, in our own time, using these various forms of knowledge. Some people, they would no more want to study the Mandukya Upanishad than they would want to fly by flapping their arms. They'd be more likely to want to fly by flapping their arms. They want to take delight in the glory and joy of God's presence within their hearts. These are bhaktas. And Swami Vivekananda says, it is the surest path, though a slower one. So it's good not to minimize the others by exalting the one. We each come to this. We each come to this in our own way and in our own time. Anything else from anyone?
I know it's awesome too that God gives us all these different ways to get to him. For intellectual people, this jnana yoga will work. For
yes.
For
Yes.
people that have a body personality, they love to worship, and it's so awesome.
It is awesome. And for those who are action oriented, the workbook that Sri Krishna provides in the Gita is just exquisite. And the book, the Swami Prabhavananda's interpretation and translation is called How to Know God. Patanjali explains in great detail how you can get to this point of Savikalpa Samadhi and then go beyond it to this complete liberation. So there are these 4 paths as outlined by Swami Vivekananda. There are many, many, many other variations and so on. These are the ones that Swami Vivekananda made as part of his mission to the West. That's what he called it. I have a mission to the West as Buddha had a mission to the East. This talk that we're studying, reading, and discussing tonight is intimately a part of his mission to the West. He's speaking directly to us Westerners. Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
I think again Swamiji's contribution, for I don't know if that word is right, but to give us all these different that one can reach by any one or a combination is so helpful, so that we don't get into those silos of this is the way,
Yes,
And again, like Sri Ramakrishna said, it's good, I guess, to go in that way that seems to be the most attractive to us, and maybe use the other paths as the tool to dig the well.
yes. We that's exactly it. Sri Ramakrishna says, practice just a little and someone will come forward to help you. And what he means by that is what he refers to as the Divine Mother or Kali will tell you everything you need to know and will tell you in the way that signifies to you. So we just need to turn our attention in this direction and be persistent and diligent, which is what Sri Ramakrishna means by practice just a little. And then that which is comes forward to give us what we need. And it will happen quickly or slowly according to our nature, where we are on the spectrum of ignorance and knowledge. As Swami Brahmananda said, show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. Show me the line of demarcation. There is none. We just slowly and slowly, as Swami Sridharananda says, slowly and slowly move along that spectrum until we've left the one behind and are fully established in the other. But there's no line of demarcation. Thank you, Swayam. Anything else from anyone?
Brother, I might have misread or misheard, but I think is there some in some place some statement by or somewhere Ramakrishna had mentioned that if the concentration is weak, it takes, and if you reach a certain stage, it takes 3 days to realize. If it is strong, it takes 3 hours, something like that. Or
I don't recall that, Rajiv. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that, there's a great deal to read, even that Sri Ramakrishna said. And I am constantly amazed. I'll go back and I will read the gospel for another time after all these times, and I'll still find things in it that just simply did not come to my awareness when I read them before. I mean, my eyes obviously passed over those words, but they made no impression. So he may have said something exactly like you just related, but I don't recall it. But it directly relates to what Patanjali says in Sutras 21 and 22 of chapter 1, that our progress is directly related to the intensity of our effort. An effort to what? Remembering that the word yoga means two things. The exact same word means two things given its context. One, union. The other, detachment. Detachment from that which prevents union, and union which automatically, being in that state of union, detaches you from everything that keeps you from being in that state.
is it true that Gyan helps in detachment and Bhakti helps in union?
Oh my goodness, was that such a big question, Rajiv? There is no way for a bhakta to practice bhakti yoga without viveka and vairagya. You still need detachment, discernment or discrimination and detachment. You simply practice them somewhat differently than the jnani. The jnani says, not this, not that. Simply, in the words of the jnanis, they annihilate the mind. They annihilate the mind by simply ignoring its promptings, its resolutions, as they call them. The bhakta will say, I see that for the time being, I must leave this alone because it is a distraction. I know it is part of the glory and presence of the divine. I know that intellectually, but I don't know it in my heart. So I have to leave it be. Or as Christ said, you have to be, as a bhakta, a passerby. But you're still practicing viveka and vairagya. It's just that you're focusing your attention elsewhere, which slowly and slowly purifies and transforms your mind. As Chaitanya, in the opening of his prayer, says, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. So what you do is you turn your attention as a bhakta to the name which contains it, as he later says, each of the names of the divine contains its entire power. So that is the bhakta's way, to chant the name and glories of the Lord, turn your attention in that direction, and it purifies the heart or cleanses the mind and quenches the desire for that which is worldly. Does that answer it, Rajiv?
Yes, brother. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? Okay, it's 8:28. So the body will live on for some time until that momentum of past work is exhausted, until that momentum is worked away, and then the body and mind fall, and the soul becomes free of embodiment and does not return to it. That's what free means. No more is there any going to heaven and coming back. Not even any going to the Brahmaloka or to any of the highest of the spheres. For where is he to come from or to go to, having become one with? So even Brahmaloka, according to Swami Vivekananda's formulation here, even Brahmaloka is part of the mythology. And this is why the jnanis completely, they say not this, not that, to all of that as well. And that's why it's such a difficult path. If anyone tells you that they are a jnani, and oh, by the way, they're going on a cruise this summer, you know damn well they're not a jnani. So, but if a bhakta tells you they're going on a cruise this summer, you can accept it. Well, it just depends on how they're going to see it, how they're going to experience it. They can do that and still be a bhakta. Any final thoughts or questions from anyone?
Yeah, can you say more about like why is it if you are Jnani and you go to a cruise and you are not a Jnani?
Well, why would you want to distract yourself? If you're a jnani,
Mhm.
your attempt is to eliminate all distractions by saying not this, not that. Everything that is not eternal, changeless, and infinite is not it. Now, does that mean that someone can't practice some of the principles of jnana yoga and go on a cruise? Of course they can. But they cannot say that my path is jnana. These are called, at the Trabuco Monastery in Southern California, these are called armchair jnanis. They love to talk about it and think about it. But my God, no, they wouldn't want to live that way. A true jnani really does renounce the world and everything about it. They annihilate it by the power of their being, by the power of their intention, their counter resolution to the resolutions of the mind. There's a wonderful book about this. It is called Nectar of Supreme Knowledge. It is a translation by Swami Sarvadevananda of a book that was published in Bengali for the monks of the Ramakrishna order. And Swami Sarvadevananda said this book was written by someone who was said to be a realized soul living in the Himalayas, one of the Ramakrishna order swamis. He wrote it in Bengali for the Ramakrishna order monks. Swami Sarvadevananda thought it deserved to have wider distribution. It is a distillation, that is, the nectar of the Yoga Vashishta, the 30,000 sutras, the 30,000 aphorisms communicated to Rama by Vashishta in that 3-day session that they're said to have held.
So, Brother Shankara, now if I replace that cruise with the married life, somebody's, so would the Jnani be not this, not that? So not be attached to his family, not be attached to that. So he has to probably give up at some point, even his family, or maybe take everybody as his family. Some change will come.
Sri Ramakrishna says, you can be a jnani and be a family person if you have strong enough mental renunciation.
Mm.
You simply are going through the motions of your prarabdha karma. It was your prarabdha karma that brought you to this married situation with children and duties and so on. You recognize that fact. You see the necessity for following through on the promises that you have made to care for and provide for those people that you have brought into the world, your children, and for a wife. And so you practice mental renunciation. And what Sri Ramakrishna says is necessary for you to do this is a regular spiritual practice. And he even defines it as at least an hour and a half a day. He said, I've done the full 16 annas. You have only to do one. 1/16 of 24 hours is an hour and a half a day. You have only to do the 1/16 and occasionally go into seclusion for at least 3 days, where you take nothing with you except a holy book, some holy book that will lift your thoughts higher. And you pray earnestly during those 3 days for strength, for courage, for compassion, and for knowledge. And then you return with renewed vigor, understanding that, as Sri Ramakrishna said, a human life is only 2 days long. Trying to give some idea of the briefness of our experience as the divine having a human experience. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Somesh.
I'll just say something about that real quick.
Sure.
It seems to me like somebody said, I've had a spiritual awakening, and I look around and I'm married and I have this family, but I've had this spiritual awakening, so now I need to go to the Himalayas and go to a cave or something like that. The idea that I need to go do something different than what I'm doing right now probably means that they hadn't really had a spiritual awakening.
Exactly.
See how that works?
Exactly
where I'm supposed to be doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing now.
Right.
That's
They
a
may
spiritual-
have had some spiritual experience. They may have had some break from their normal, ordinary awareness. But, even Nisargadatta Maharaj, even Nisargadatta was misled into thinking that he needed to go to the Himalayas. And he was on his way there and he encountered another disciple of his guru. And the disciple said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm going to practice in the Himalayas." The guy said, "Don't be a dope. Go home. Lead your life. Just do what he told you to do. You don't have to go to the Himalayas. You're just wasting your time. And by the way, you're abandoning your family." And so Nisargadatta came back. And by the time he'd come back, of course, the family had frittered away, as families often will when they're no longer under good guidance, had frittered away most of what he had created, which was, I don't know, I've forgotten, a number of beedi shops. But he was left with the one. It was enough to sustain him and the family. And so he began to practice very wholeheartedly, and it took him only 3 years from then to achieve whatever it was that you might say he achieved. But he certainly was able to say, in a way that's very convincing, "I am that," which is the name of a book about him. If you want to know these stories, then you can read that book, "I Am That." You're absolutely right, Grady, that, if someone says, "I've had a spiritual awakening and it means I have to abandon what I'm doing," well, read the story of Yajnavalkya in the Great Forest Upanishad, the Brihadranyaka Upanishad. I mean, what a great story of someone who had become a realized soul and was going to leave behind all of his duties, but leaving everyone perfectly and fully provided for. But his wife, Maitreyi, says, wait a minute. Is this wealth and all this that you're leaving me with going to do me any good? He said, well, not really. So she says to him, well, tell me what will do me any good. Tell me what you know. And so he does. And there's this long passage in the Brihadranyaka Upanishad, which is about, it's called the Big Forest Upanishad because it contains the testimony of a number of realized souls. He tells her what he knows. And it is very compelling. Anything else from anyone? All right. Well, until next week, we'll read what we just read a little bit and then go on. And if we can just ponder, where is there to come from or go to? We can do our manana on just that thought. Where is there to come from or go to? If all this coming and going, all this appearance is just a mythology. Om asatoma satkamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amrutangamaya, abir moiti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga Durga Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So the next class will be Saturday. And then on Sunday, we have the annual meeting of the congregation. You'll read about that in the newsletter if you get the newsletter. The annual meeting of the congregation will be from 11 to noon next Sunday. It'll be followed by a lunch here in the monastery, as is traditional. And then on Tuesday evening, there will be no Tuesday class next week. On Tuesday evening, Swami Sarvadevananda will speak here in the chapel. It will be Zoomed as well, of course. But his talk will be mythology. What did Swami Vivekananda mean by that? And when I suggested that topic to him, he was very enthusiastic, and he began talking immediately and was still talking about 10 minutes later. So you can bet that he will have a lot to say. Mythology, what did Swamiji mean by that? So next Tuesday at 7:30 here in the chapel, Swami Sarvadevananda. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Until next time, which would be Saturday. Of course, there's always Arati each evening at 6:30 over Zoom, for those of you who are inclined in that direction. Until the next time we see one another, good night.